on the reviewer side to start, we have a very thorough moderation process, right? So we'll do actually a little bit of background research on who's leaving these reviews, right? So that a carrier can't just be reviewing themselves
Yeah.
or having their friends review them, right? We ask if they're a broker for their MC number, a business email address to verify that they work at that brokerage that they're claiming to. We ask for proof within the review form, whether that's a redacted rate confirmation or a screenshot of their TMS or email correspondence, something that proves that they actually worked with that carrier, so that they can't just pump up their score, right, and end up at the top of search results and so on.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have Rob Light. He's the CEO and co-founder of CarrierSource. Rob, thanks for coming to the ThinkFreight Podcast today. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Thomas.
Absolutely, man. So you and I were just talking off camera for a second about the Bulls, and if you're a Bulls fan and you're pro blow up the team, comment down below, because we're both Bulls fans and we are pro blow up the team. I don't know if Rob wanted that info out there, but he is pro blow up the team. So we are going to blow it up, hopefully, because we suck.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's a sad state of Chicago sports all around, but my expectations for the Bulls are at rock bottom. So blow it up.
2 years ago, the expectations were at an all-time high. The vibes were at an all-time high with Lonzo, and now the vibes are gone. We don't have any vibes. So, man, I appreciate you coming on. Let's, what I want to do, Rob, I want to dive into your background and really kind of tell the listeners how you got to where you are today, and then kind of dive into what CarrierSource is, because I think it's a really interesting platform. And I think it's unique to what you guys are doing. There's some other people out there that are doing, similar things, but not exactly what you're doing. So let's dive into that. How did you get to freight and logistics? How'd you find yourself here?
Yeah, it was a bit of a process. So I was a early employee at a company called G2.com, which does reviews of software products so that buyers have a better understanding of what they're purchasing. I had the pleasure of watching that business grow from 20 employees to 400 when I left, and now at 700 that it is now, or more. But I really kind of got indoctrinated with the power of reviews and watching how these small software vendors were able to compete with some of the biggest brands out there because they were able to leverage the voice of their customers, right? Use that in marketing, use that in sales, build a brand around it. And around the time of one of our later funding rounds, I had a friend come to me who's been a broker here in Chicago at a number of different 3PLs since we graduated school. And he was like, "Hey, G2 is raising a lot of money. That's cool. What do you do?" And I explained to him the review aspect. And he said, as a carrier sales rep, if I had reviews of trucking companies, my life would be a whole lot easier. And that stuck with me for a really long time. But I think what really convinced us to take the leap and to build CarrierSource was talking to small fleets and owner operators and getting a better understanding of some of their challenges in the space, and realizing how big of a portion of the market they made up, yet how small of a voice they really had, right? They didn't have an online presence. Most, a huge majority don't have websites. And the only sort of review mechanisms that existed out there were negative, right? There's necessary reporting that exists. There's freight guard reports inside Carrier 411 or TIA watchdog reports for theft or fraud, and that's good for the industry and necessary. But there's so many professional, hardworking carriers out there who deserve that fair reputation, that two-sided reputation to show off the high level of service they provide, that we decided that this G2, Glassdoor, Yelp type model could benefit the industry.
That's very interesting, because I fully agree. So I was on the TQL, like cradle to grave, so I was sourcing carriers, sourcing my own loads, sourcing my own shippers, everything. And the only really tool that we had at our disposal to vet carriers was the internal like TQL information. So if they weren't in our system already, we basically just had to go through the normal carrier setup process, and we had a carrier setup team that basically would handle all of that, reach out to insurance companies, make sure everything was verified, and then give us the green light. But that's such a small portion of the market, right? Like the TQLs, they're so big, they have that, but there's a lot of smaller brokerages that have 15, 20 people that still need access to some of this information you guys have and reviews, right? Like it's not just the big players that should be able to have this access. So it's good to see that you guys have kind of taken that similar approach to helping, like what you said, what G2 was doing, and taking that similar model of Yelp and G2 and kind of morphing everything together into a platform for reviews for carriers. Now, is it just strictly for carriers, or is it like how does that model work? Is it brokers? Like how does that side translate?
Yeah, so right now we only have carrier profiles on the site.
Cool.
The website is entirely open and free, so it's free for brokers and shippers to come in. We have a pretty powerful lane search prospecting solution now, given that we've collected over 50,000 reviews, and we've had over 20,000 carriers claim their profile page, add some lane data. So they can come in and prospect to find the best carriers to move their freight, right, based off of reviews from their peers and the quality of service they provide. Now, we do get a lot of requests to have brokerage profiles up there. It's something we intend to do. If I had to guess, in the next quarter or so, we will have brokerage profiles, because it's only fair if carriers are being reviewed that they can review brokers as well. And we think there's a big opportunity as well for brokerages who want to build that reputation, not just amongst carriers, but amongst shippers as well, right? So to collect shipper reviews from that standpoint, which we're really excited about.
I think you'll find that a lot of carriers will appreciate and like the shipper review side a lot, because I think that there's a lot of instances where shippers don't do the best at loading or unloading or have the best professionalism. And I always think that sharing that side of it, because truckers are the backbone, carriers are the backbone of what we do. As a broker, when I was a broker for a long time, I couldn't have moved one load without a carrier, without owner operators, without these drivers. So, the way that they're treated and the fairness in which that they're treated in the industry, it really is impactful and something I'm conscious of. So that's why I thought that, what you guys are doing is very, very unique and very interesting, because it is tough to find accurate and truthful information out there, especially in freight, right? There's a lot of moving pieces, and it's tough to know who to believe and what to believe. So on that, lane, how tough is it for you guys to find some of that like accurate information, or how do you guys kind of come up with some of that data for like, I know it's a lot of pure peer to peer, but how are you guys get a lot of the other data that you guys tend to serve?
Yeah, so we do pipe in FMCSA data that we update, licensing and insurance data that we update daily, company information that gets released monthly that we update on those profiles. But it is largely sourced either directly from the carrier, right? I mentioned that they can claim their profile page for free. They can come in, they can update contact information, they can input what type of equipment they have, what type of shipments they run, lanes or states or regions that they service. They can also upload a logo or an image to their profile page. They can write a description of their business, share a little bit about their background, right? Sell their
kind of be like a pseudo website for them, essentially.
Yeah, for the small folks who maybe aren't interested in building a website, they can use that profile page as their online presence. As part of a premium marketing service, though, we do actually allow them to spin up a business website that's hosted through CarrierSource that is admin from their profile page on CarrierSource. So a lot of that description that they write can get pushed straight over. They can select what reviews they want to have to live on their website as customer testimonials, lanes, images they upload. That can all get pushed straight to a website that lives under their own domain that they own, but hosted within CarrierSource. So, we provide some additional tools to help them flush out that online presence. But so that's one way we collect the data, is from the
Yeah.
carriers themselves. The review form that we have as well from brokers and shippers is a little more comprehensive. So we'll ask quality of their communication, timeliness, quality of their equipment, cleanliness of their equipment, if they're a shipper and they know those things. Would you work with them again? Lanes they were running, type of equipment, all that good stuff that helps to really flesh out that profile and get a better understanding of who these carriers are. And so that is what we think is the most impactful data, is that not just satisfaction data, but also straight from the carrier as well.
Yeah. So let me ask this. So I know with a lot of the fraud and double broker situations and stolen identities that's happening right now, how do you guys go about, like, I know you said you can claim your pages. How do you guys go about vetting and ensuring that this information is accurate? These are the actual like owners of the company you are talking to, and we're not dealing with like a stolen identity situation to get more loads or to get themselves a better presence for a short time.
Yeah. So on the reviewer side, to start, we have a very thorough moderation process, right? So we'll do actually a little bit of background research on who's leaving these reviews, right? So that a carrier can't just be reviewing themselves or having their friends review them, right? We ask if they're a broker for their MC number, a business email address to verify that they work at that brokerage that they're claiming to. We ask for proof within the review form, whether that's a redacted rate confirmation or a screenshot of their TMS or email correspondence, something that proves that they actually worked with that carrier, so they can't just pump up their score, right, and end up at the top of search results and so on. On the carrier claiming side, we do heavily rely on FMCSA data. So if you're coming in to claim your profile page, we actually kick that verification link to whatever email is on file with the FMCSA. And so that it poses some challenges, when folks are stealing FMCSA data and changing some information there. And we keep an eye out for that. We won't just update that email address for anybody, right? If somebody says, hey, I don't have access to that email anymore, we say, okay, you got to provide us a whole slew of proof to show that you actually work for that company before we'll give you access to it. And we're also working on a couple other partnerships with some compliance folks about some other credentials to prove that they are who they are when they come in to claim their profile page.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad that there's a thorough process kind of behind it to verify, and it's not just like automatically updating or changing emails or data without them knowing, right? So I think that's definitely a good step and a good way to help mitigate some of those issues. Now I know that you said that you guys are moderating them heavily. Now, can carriers can carriers respond to these reviews within the platform? So if broker XYZ leaves a negative review for whatever reason and it gets published, can they respond directly to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So they for free can come in when they claim their page and respond publicly. Those responses live on the front end of their profile page. There's no time limit to the turnaround that they have to respond, right? I know there's a few other mechanisms out there that have a short time span for you to come in and share your side of the story. And we encourage all of our carriers to respond to every review, even if it's a positive review, right? Say, hey, thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy day and leaving us this great feedback. But also if it's a negative review, it's great to share your side of the story. But also we often encourage them to take the high road in most situations, right? Like, you showed up late. I'm sure there was many factors that went into that, right? Whether it was mechanical, weather, traffic, something outside your control, right? Share your side of the story and then say, hey, well, we take ownership, we take responsibility. We're sorry. We'd love to make it up to you. Please work with us again, and we'll show you that we provide a really high level of service. And through lots of research that we did dating back to G2, a negative review with a really well done response can actually be more impactful than a positive review. because it shows
Yeah,
that you
that's
care,
interesting.
right? It
Yeah.
shows that you care about your reputation, your brand, you care about the service that you provide. Um, and it also in this space really proves legitimacy too, right? Like if you take the time to respond to a negative review with that kind of positive spin to it, you're probably a very legit carrier who provides a good service.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because I'm thinking about times in my own life now where I've seen that kind of, Google review where someone gives critical feedback and the owner or manager of the establishment kind of lashes out and or blames the person leaving a review, or there's 50 other factors that went into it. I've always taken that kind of as like a cringy situation, right? Like, just own up to it. Mistakes happen. We all know that. No one's perfect. No business is perfect. So it's just like it's how you respond and how you own those situations of unfortunate events. And some people are always going to leave a good review or bad review. Someone's never going to be happy, but it's just always about how you respond to those negative situations, and how you like you said, it's how you manage your reputation. And I think that that's very important, especially on the carrier side, with especially right now with such a tough market. Um, Brokers and shippers have their pick of carriers, so you have to stand out. You have to do things a little bit differently, and not just be like everyone else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And um, our hope is that these reviews in the voice of your customer can help get you better loads. Like, it can convince brokers to work with you versus the carrier down the block, right? If you're a
Yeah,
smaller owner op, it's a really good time to show that, hey, you're better than 90% of those carriers in your segment, right? That
yeah,
run your lane. And for bigger folks too, who, bid season's here,
it's
and
here.
if you can take those reviews and leverage the voice of your customer, and when you're trying to build those relationships with customers, you can say, hey, don't just take it from me, right? But take it from the voice of folks that we've provided this amazing service to. Take their word for it. Um, and
Yeah.
consider that when you're looking at, it's not just the price, right? It's obviously the quality of service they provide too. So we just think that there's a lot of opportunity for that in this space.
I have an interesting question for you. So what is your take on, um, say a video review? How does that rank in your opinion, um, versus like a text review or a text with attachment review? Is that something you guys do, or have you guys thought about going in that direction?
Yeah, so it is on the roadmap, and we did get to that eventually at G2 as well. And I do
Interesting.
think it's
That's cool.
very impactful, right? It is really cool. It's in today's day and age, it's so much more shareable. It is
Yeah.
more engaging. I mean, I'm sure you have some stats, in your own business, right, around the
Yeah.
engagement that you get on videos versus a simple text post.
Yep.
So yeah, no, we definitely want to do that. Um, and it really does bring to life some of these relationships too, right? Like it is a relationship industry at the end of the day, whether that's,
Absolutely.
broker carrier relationships, shipper broker, shipper carrier, it's very much relationship based. And so if you can put a face behind that relationship, and a video to boot, like that's very powerful. And so we're excited about what that can look like.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you guys are looking at that and have that on the product roadmap for the future, because I think that, like you said, it really drives engagement, but also it shares more of the story. I think when you can really, when I can sit here and grab my phone and make a 1 minute or 2 minute carrier review, as a broker, I would have been happy to do that for my good carriers and my good carrier partners, to make sure that they stayed in business. Because if they don't stay in business and they don't get the good opportunities, I lose that carrier partner. So it's always about helping build them up, and just, they're going to remember that. They're going to help, like, they're they're always going to help you, and reciprocate those good responses back. So I think that it's something that a lot of companies and brokerages just kind of miss the mark on. I think is sharing some of those good feedback and good wins.
Yeah. And, a few years ago when we really were vetting the idea, even we talked to a lot of brokers, carrier
Yeah.
sales reps, and we asked, hey, would you leave reviews of your carriers? And so many people said, no, like I keep my best carriers to myself. Like I don't even want my teammates to know who like runs these lanes and who provides a great service, let alone some other brokerage, right? But
Yeah.
we've really found that that's not the case. Most people will leave reviews of their best carriers because, just like you said, it helps strengthen that relationship, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of a little bit of a, if you give them praise, like they'll stick with you, right? And
Oh
especially
yeah.
if you make that public. And so we've been really pleased with the response from the carrier sales community versus what we thought might happen.
Now, kind of on a different note, I'm generally pretty good at sticking to my roadmap of our conversation, but I want to dive back just a little bit more into kind of your background because you had said something that interested me, and I ran with that instead of diving further into your background. But you've been in the industry for about 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, about 3 years now.
So how has the transition into freight and logistics been? Right, it's a very um, dumpster fire of an industry, and you came in at such an interesting time. So how has that transition been from G2 to the wonderful world of freight?
Yeah, I mean it's been an experience for sure. I think it's been fascinating though, and it is, you're right, completely different from the software world from so many standpoints. But I think
Yeah,
the biggest difference was we knew we wanted to build a solution for small fleets owner operators first. It's the biggest segment, it's the hardest segment to reach. Like, let's do the most challenging thing first, right? In terms of building product.
yeah,
And we realized very quickly that we needed to create these really base level marketing solutions, right? Versus at G2, you're working with some of the biggest
big
SaaS vendors
names.
in the world, right? And they have
Yeah,
very sophisticated marketing teams, and you can dig into account-based marketing, buyer intent data. Like you can do a lot of
yeah,
different things there, right? But in this industry, it was like, hey, let's figure out how to just make them appear online, right? And so
right.
it was, some of those things. And we sat down and we talked like, hey, if we were going to go be a marketer for an owner operator, what's the first thing we would do? And I was like, we'd build a website, right? We'd spin up a
Yeah,
website. Um, we would create social media accounts. We would think through quality social media posts. So something that we offer to them is using their reviews within social media channels, right?
mm,
Helping them build those posts to make them look nice and represent their brand, um, to make them a logo, to uh,
yeah,
help them choose good colors and a simple logo that works for them. Um, and so these really base level marketing solutions, I think, was the biggest difference. Um, but there are so many. It's really apples and oranges, right? There's
yeah.
different transactional natures to the freight industry. There are more outside factors, like of course software comes and goes with the macro economy, but the freight economy in and of itself with supply and demand is much more pure supply and demand, I guess, would be the way to put it. And so that's fascinating and provides its own challenges in this space, right?
Absolutely.
But I really do think it's fascinating. Like it interests me every day. I learn new things every day still, right? I assume most people in this industry still learn new things
Every
all the
day.
time, which is exciting. Like that is a
Yeah.
fun space to be in because it's never a dull moment. And I have learned to really appreciate what trucking companies do, the role brokers play, the challenges that shippers have. Like it is a very complex industry, as we've
It
seen with
is.
a number of companies who've been trying to solve these problems for the
A long
better half,
time.
a decade now. A lot of freight tech companies have been trying to do this, right? And so um, it's exciting that it's that challenging.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So you always known you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Because I love talking to, you know, smaller founders who saw a problem and just said, I'm gonna go for it. And I just kind of like to know, like, did you always know, were you entrepreneurial when you were younger? or like when was that kind of like aha moment? Like I'm going to go out there and do something for myself.
Yeah, I don't think I always was entrepreneurial, to be honest with you. I kind of fell into G2, frankly,
Mm,
which is a kudos to the founders of G2 and the way that they hired. They went out, they just tried to find hungry, eager, ambitious employees, um, and taught them how to play their role within the company, right? And I think
that's
they did a
awesome.
really good job of recruiting and hiring, smart, driven people, and giving them that opportunity. And they're extremely entrepreneurial. Like G2 is
Mm,
their third of five endeavors now that they've taken on, right? And they're always going back for more, and that was very infectious. And watching them build, I think, was extremely inspiring. And um, no, I think this opportunity kind of presented itself, and I decided to go for it 2 weeks before the pandemic started, and we were all stuck at home, and that slowed things down significantly early on, but. And in hindsight, probably would have stuck around a little longer. G2 had I known
so so
everybody's working from home.
did you just leave? You left your job and then just decided I'm going to dive into this?
So no, we were already in the
Okay.
process of building the website, right? And it was
Okay.
starting to become overwhelming, the amount of
Work
effort we
to
were putting into it.
yeah.
And I realized sitting at my desk at G2 some days, like I'm kind of doing more CarrierSource work than I am G2 work, and this is probably not right.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, going back to it, I really do credit the founders of G2. They've been extremely influential, in terms of sharing their entrepreneurial spirit with me and with a lot of employees that have come out of there.
That's no, that's really awesome. I love that. I love that like kind of like aha moment, like where you were just like, I'm gonna fill this need and it feels right, sounds right. And you kind of had, you kind of had tested the waters. You talked to a lot of people and really flushed it out, it sounds like, before you really dove into it and then yeah, just kind of fell into a good, I guess, a good opportunity, right? Like, yeah, like the market was pretty bad during the very beginning of COVID, but it quickly rebounded into a very hot market. So you kind of have seen now your first real cycle in a market where it's gone from the highest of maybe the highest we've ever had to some of the lowest of the lows. How is that like shift in the market? I guess kind of for you, how has that kind of been eye opening for you in terms of like how these shifts in the freight market move?
Yeah, it goes back to that fascinating aspect, right, of pure supply and demand. Like
Yeah,
it is an economics lesson every day, right? Um,
absolutely.
but no, it's been super interesting to see, and to give a little under the hood of CarrierSource and some of the engagement we got early on, right? Like we set up the site in November of 2020, and
Okay.
creating this open website where we rank really well in Google for most carrier names, and so our site traffic come beginning of 2021 just went
Through the
bananas, right?
roof.
Um, because folks couldn't find enough carriers to move their freight. Like they were doing anything, right, to find those folks. So we saw really good early traction in that sense. Um, and I very much wish we'd had a better product built out at that point,
Mm.
to be selling to be selling to carriers. Like if we had what we have now, I would have
Yeah.
been feeling really good about it. Um, but so it was really interesting to see kind of that need to find those carriers in 2021. Um, and how that need has changed significantly. And now I think we have something even more interesting to offer, which is now you can be choosier about what carriers you're using. You should use higher quality
Yeah.
carriers, right? Those that actually provide a good service. And then there's the fraud layer too, that's just been on top of everybody's mind. But um, you can feel it in your business when the market's
Yeah.
hot, the market's hot, and people are excited and it's easier to sell. And when the market's down like it is now, it's a struggle. And we talk to carriers every day who are having such a hard time, um, losing money on most loads, right, and most miles they run. And
Yeah.
so, um, it's challenging for them. And our hope is that CarrierSource can play just a small role in making their job's a little easier getting the word out about who they are and ultimately finding more business. But it's very interesting to see. And I don't think any industry is truly immune to kind of macro situations like that, but it's just very
Yeah, I totally
pronounced in
agree.
this industry.
I'd love to kind of get your quick take, kind of as we wrap up on time. Like we just saw, like you and I talked a little bit off the record on this before, but a little bit about Convoy and their recent closure. I'd love to just kind of get your quick thoughts on that and kind of where the state of like VC led like freight brokerages and tech companies kind of are in the space today, and then yeah, it's kind of love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll start off saying I'm far from the expert on it, right? But when we were talking before, my initial thought when I was reading all the Convoy stuff happening was how heartbroken I was for early employees that held stock options, right? That at one point were
Yeah,
worth quite a bit of money, and I hope they had
a lot.
opportunities to take some stuff off the table, some shares off the table in secondary markets and whatnot. Um, but that was my initial reaction, was like to be very heartbroken for those employees. And coming into this space in 2020, Convoy was kind of the talk of the freight tech world,
Yeah,
right? Like they were the standard at that point. Um, and so it was inspiring to see that a startup could reach that scale in this world
yeah,
and this industry. And so they were inspirational to an extent for that. But and it's been written about a lot, and there are again far more qualified people to talk on a lot of it. But
yeah.
being a victim of blitzscaling is not that uncommon. I think the outlier are successful blitzscaling companies, not those that have tried and failed, right?
Failed. Yeah,
Um, and it's really the lesson here is it's really hard to justify SaaS or some other technology valuations and multiples in an industry where margin is just not there the same way. Certain
yeah,
SaaS companies can have
definitely.
60-70% margin, and therefore they can warrant a 10x valuation, a 20x valuation if they're going to reach these revenue numbers that they claim to be able to reach that
Right.
we all tout, right? So, but in the brokerage world, it's just different. It's the margin's not there in that same way, and so it's hard to justify that valuation. I ultimately think that was the downfall here when people came to that
Yeah.
realization, and it's a bit of a wake up call from that angle.
Yeah, I think it's just, when you try to do that model of market share at any cost, it's easier to do in an environment where money is cheap and money is easy to come by. VCs were a lot more willing to give out money 2015, 2016, 2018. So as we got tighter with what these high percentage on loans are or VC money, it just became unreasonable to think that they could continue to buy market share and continue to have money flow in to actually be able to stay cash positive for another long time, to weather the storm in the market. Yeah, it's just it's gonna be interesting because we still are there still are other um, brokerages or technology companies like what Convoy was doing. There's been plenty that have popped up since, so it's going to be very interesting to see how those models kind of transition over the next couple of years, because I don't think it's a sustainable model.
Yeah, I think without the subscription aspect of it, right? If you're just charging a subscription for using a product, that's one thing. But
Yeah,
if you're reliant on market rates and making margin off of market rates, I don't know if we'll ever see somebody warrant that type of multiple or valuation ever again, right? So
yeah,
many people have talked about it, but it's critical to turn a profit in brokerage. Like you have to be profitable. Really, you
yeah,
should be, right? If you're going to be successful. Um, and startups and VC-backed companies are an unprofitable business, a
yeah,
huge majority of the time. And that's what you sign up for when you take on VC funding, right? Like you're going to burn money. That's the whole model, and hopefully this forces a lot of freight tech companies like ourselves included to focus on cash flow positive and breaking even and even profitability instead of growth at all costs.
No, that's really insightful, and I appreciate that, Rob. And as we wrap up here, I just want to again thank you for coming on the show. I really do appreciate your time. Where can everyone find you and CarrierSource online? So if they think that this is interesting and want to take a look at what you guys are doing, how can they take a look?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the website's open and free to access. It's CarrierSource.io. It's free to come in and perform searches
Awesome.
and read reviews on carriers, find those carriers. It's free to write reviews if you've got good carriers that you want to praise and provide that positive feedback for, or if you've got some carriers that you may want to maybe not give positive feedback to, that's an option as well, right? Go to CarrierSource.io. We encourage you to sign up, leave reviews. And yeah, I suppose I don't have too much of a social presence, but if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, I'm responsive there, and I've been doing my best to post a little bit more and get the word out there.
No, I appreciate it, man. And all of Rob's links and CarrierSource links will be in the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, down in the description. Make sure you do like and review. That does help us out tremendously, or give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And don't forget to check out the newsletter. Those drop on Monday and Wednesday, ThinkFreight.io. Thanks again for coming on, Rob. We appreciate it. Welcome on the show anytime.
Thanks so much, Tommy. I appreciate it.